Vice Chancellor for Communications and Marketing at Vanderbilt University. Just want to thank you all for coming together to join us for what we think is going to be a really fun and exciting night as we launch the premiere of Quantum Potential. So the short films you're about to see are more than just a promotion of Vanderbilt's incredible capacity for innovation and discovery. These films also make plain the immeasurable public good that universities provide, at a moment when highlighting the value of research university is more important than ever. By shining a bright light on the extraordinary researchers working every day to make the world better, Quantum Potential reminds us that America's research universities are one of our most valuable treasures. We are so proud to help tell that story with these films. I want to thank just a few people who made this possible. So working with Jad Abumrad, he's a master storyteller, of course a MacArthur genius, has been a delight, and you'll hear more from Jad shortly. I want to thank my team, the Communications and Marketing Division, who've really worked tirelessly on this project for more than a year. And I'm really excited that they get to see the culmination of all that hard work tonight. And then finally, I want to credit our talented filmmakers, a team led by Mac Primo and Adriana DeFay, who are friends of Jad. They're based in Brooklyn. And part of what makes these films so powerful is that they're like nothing you've really ever seen at a university. We really wanted to do something that we felt was distinctive, and working with these filmmakers was really a really special opportunity. So our thanks to all who are involved in this creation, and with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Chancellor Daniel Diermeier. So an internationally renowned political scientist and management scholar, Daniel Diermeier is the 9th Chancellor of Vanderbilt University. Since joining Vanderbilt in 2020, Chancellor Diermeier has led an ambitious program of growth and advancement. Under his visionary leadership, the university has risen in stature, successfully launched a record $3.2 billion fundraising campaign, topped the $1 billion mark in research funding for the first time in the university's history, and reaffirmed our longstanding commitment to free expression and civil discourse. He has driven efforts to become the destination for leading faculty and the most promising students, to create a culture of radical collaboration and personal growth for Vanderbilt's faculty, students, and staff, and to expand Vanderbilt's global presence. Before arriving at Vanderbilt, Chancellor Diermeier served in leadership and faculty roles at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, and at the University of Chicago, where he served as Dean of the Harris School of Public Policy and subsequently as Provost. So please join me in welcoming Chancellor Daniel Diermeier.
I can't see any one of you, but looks like it's a full house. Well, thank you, Steve, and good evening to all of you. I'm so delighted to welcome all of you to tonight's premiere of Vanderbilt University's Quantum Potential. We're honored to be launching this series in this historic space, one of Nashville's many distinct cultural treasures, and we're so grateful to the Belcourt Theater for enriching, educating, and inspiring our community for nearly 100 years. So we are 150, they're almost 100 years, all works out perfectly. First of all, I'd like to express my profound thanks to Jad Abumrad for the extraordinary vision that dreamed up this project. I remember when we first met, which was, I want to say like 2 years ago, something like that. And this was really one of the first ideas that we talked about, how to talk about science in a new, fresh, and really innovative way. And I also want to thank all the Vanderbilt staff and faculty who helped bring this exciting vision to life, including and especially those who have come here to share their remarkable stories of discovery and talents with us tonight. The way we've been thinking about this is that these stories are a way to show you in a uniquely powerful way a little bit about what we at Vanderbilt do and also who we are. And beyond that, to shed an important light on an imperative question, which is, why are we doing what we're doing? What is the purpose of a research university like ours? What vital role do these university roles hold in our shared 21st century global society with all its complex challenges and the profound certainties that lie ahead? And it is because or despite the ever-changing landscape of universities, despite that change, our fundamental purpose has really never changed. We exist, when it all comes down to it, to unlock and to maximize human potential. And we do that through transformative education and, as you'll see today, through path-breaking research. Simply put, we are fueling discovery and innovation that has the power to radically change the world for the better. Indeed, I would argue that universities like ours are the best places in the world where brilliant minds from all backgrounds and disciplines can come together, can test their ideas together, and we give them all the space and freedom here they need to ask the bold questions that makes deep discoveries possible. These are the people that deliberately reach across boundaries. They think and they collaborate in new ways, forever seeking new frontiers with a shared vision of unlocking deep new insights for a brighter tomorrow. And the range of impact that can come from their work is breathtaking. From tackling global pandemics, to unlocking the mysteries of the human brain, to probing the far reaches of the universe, to find solutions to urgent problems like climate change and the responsible use of AI, and to finally get rid of these pesky traffic jams. Tonight we've come together to celebrate their work and the people that made it possible. But more than that, we're here to celebrate human potential itself, the great capacity within all of us to imagine, to discover, to solve, and to create. We are proud of our people at Vanderbilt, in this room, back on our campus, and all over the world. And we're excited to show you tonight, and in the season ahead, just a little bit about what we all do, and with the knowledge that there's much more to come. May the stories you hear tonight inspire you. And for all of us, may they also serve as a challenge. May we all ask together, what's next? Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and enjoy the show.
Thank you, Chancellor Diermeyer. So it is my privilege now to welcome to the stage Jad Abumrad. Jad is a public radio icon, for those of you who don't know, podcast pioneer. He recently joined Vanderbilt as a distinguished research professor of cinema and media arts and of communication of science and technology at the College of Arts and Science. Selfishly, I've enjoyed the opportunity for him to work with us in the Communications and Marketing Division as well. Abumrad created Radiolab and Dolly Parton's America, both Peabody Award-winning podcasts that explore big questions in philosophy and humanity. Abumrad was named a MacArthur Fellow in 2011 for innovation in the podcast field. Please join me in welcoming Jad to the stage.
Hey, hey, how's everybody doing? Thank you, Steve, for that intro. It's been an absolute, I'm looking here, I'm not even sure if he's there anymore. It's been an absolute blast working with your team to make these videos. Super excited for you all to see them. But let me just say a few words about what the hell this is. What is this quantum potential? What does that title even mean kind of endeavor? And as the Chancellor mentioned, it really started with an early conversation when I was, for 20 years I've been working in podcasting and radio making, and I got to a place where I was ready for something new and began to have conversations with the Chancellor and with Dean John Geer, who's the Dean of Arts and Sciences at the time, about joining the Vanderbilt community. And in one of those conversations, we were on the Zoom, and I remember the Chancellor said, we have a problem. We have a story problem, not just here at Vanderbilt, but in higher ed in general. We, too often the stories that get told about higher ed are not the stories that we would tell, and no one is telling the stories about what we do and why we do it, and what is the spirit that drives all of it. We need to figure that out. And so that was kind of knocking around in my head as I joined Vanderbilt, and I started coming from New York to Nashville pretty much every other week. I should say I grew up in Nashville, so I grew up wandering this campus. But I was like, what do these people do? I don't know what happens in that building? I have no idea. So I got to come as an adult and actually meet the people who work at Vanderbilt. I sort of gave that as my first task. Let me meet the faculty and sort of see what happens and who's doing what. And that's kind of where this series begins, because I would come here and I would have these very highly scheduled days where 9 a.m. I would meet a chemist who is studying the molecular composition of human breast milk, and he's got this crazy idea that if we could take some of the sugars out of breast milk and flip them into a drug that could treat the horrible side effects of chemotherapy, and also develop a new paint from these sugars that the Navy could use to paint their boats. And I would walk out of that meeting being like, damn. And then 10 a.m., I would go into a meeting with a diction coach at Blair School of Music. This is somebody who teaches people how to sing in German, because if you're a singer, maybe you don't know how to speak German, but you've got to sing these German operas. So she would teach people the German phonemes of how to sing. And she had a legally blind student and needed to be able to communicate with that person and teach them the phonemes. So she developed this device that it's like a Braille device that literally changes the pins on the fly and can speak a dozen different languages, just so she could communicate with this one person. And now that device could literally revolutionize how sight-impaired people read and communicate. And I'd leave that meeting being like, my God. And then, at noon, I would go and have tacos with a history professor. And he would tell me he's teaching Greek history. Great. But I also happen to dabble in VR, and I've become an expert in the creation of VR worlds so that I can literally teach Greek history to my students while we all stand in a virtual Acropolis. And I would leave these meetings being like, Jesus, God, that everybody here is doing such bonkers, potentially world-changing stuff. And I've been interviewing people for 20 years. I'm not easily impressed, but I would walk out of these meetings being really dizzy. And that is when the sort of idea of quantum potential began to sort of surface. I began to think of all of the different faculty members here, the researchers, the scholars, the writers, the fine artists. All these different people are like little bubbles on a kind of fluctuating quantum foam. Like some people, cosmologists think that like the substrate of our reality is this kind of quantum sea, and the little bubbles are sort of merging to the surface and then disappearing underneath and emerging again. And every so often, one of these bubbles will detach from the surface and create an entire universe. That's how people think our universe was formed. One of these little bubbles floated away, and the Big Bang happened. And I began to think of all of these people as potentially having that effect on the world. I mean, think of a guy like Mark Dennison. He is I believe he's an immunologist, infectious disease expert. Since the 80s, he's been studying this really strange group of viruses called the corona family. Nobody cared. For 30 years, he wanted to know, like, why are they so big? All the other viruses are so small. These viruses are so big. He figured it out. No one cared. And then 2019, everybody cared all of a sudden. And his work became the foundation for one of the greatest scientific sprints in human history, right? There's so many of these stories that I was just bumping into every day. And so the pitch was, and thankfully the chancellor and the provost and Steve's team, they all said yes. The pitch was, if we're going to tell the story of higher ed, let's do it by parachuting into one bubble at a time and meeting somebody, seeing how they work, and not just how they work and what they're doing, but like what drives them. Like, who are they really? And so I reached out to some video artists that I work with a lot in Brooklyn, Mac Primo and Adriana Dufay. I mean, what you're about to see, like the visual swagger of it, that's all them. And we made 5 videos. You're gonna see 2 of them right now. And I'm gonna come back on the other side and we'll all talk about it a little bit. So without further ado, again, thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy the premiere of Quantum Potential.
What is light?
Oh, wow. Light is a wave, the spectrum, photons, charged particles, color, visible and then non-visible, power, a wave that's oscillating. God, it's part of every living thing, everything that's moving.
Roughly 6,000 people work at Vanderbilt. Any one of them can change the world. I'm Jad Abumrad, new professor here at Vandy, and today I'm meeting, bing, Dr. Audrey Bowden. She works with light.
At its most basic level, light is a form of energy. Light isn't just visible, it's ultraviolet, it's infrared, and the color is related to the amount of energy that it has.
And all of those lights that we can't see are here?
Yeah. In fact, we're emitting light. If you had, a thermal camera, you'd be able to see we're all glowing in some way. So if I put my finger under here.
Wow, that's so cool.
You can see that your finger has multiple different layers in it.
Wait, so this right here is the top of your finger?
That's the top of my finger. So there's the dermal layer, the epidermal layer.
Do you mind if I stick my finger
Oh
in
yeah,
there?
no, go ahead. Go ahead. So yours, you can really see the corkscrews of your sweat ducts there.
Does that mean I'm just like a sweaty guy?
It means you're human, right?
Yeah.
So much of your work is about using light to see into people. Can you explain how that works?
So light travels in a straight line until it hits a boundary. In the case of our interview, for example, there's a light source right here, and those light waves are propagating outwards and they're hitting my skin. And what you're seeing in the camera is a reflection of the light that bounced off of my skin. So my skin is basically like a partially reflecting mirror. And so what we're collecting with our specialized detectors as opposed to a standard camera is the sum of all of those reflections that come back.
So you're catching the bounce back.
We're catching the bounce back.
So the reason you're able to have this image at all is because some of the light reflects back at shallower or deeper parts than others.
That's
and then
right.
it's able to reconstruct a picture from that.
Right. I became fascinated with the concept of light when I learned there was this whole field called biomedical optics. This is an optics lab. There's a phrase that we use in my field called bench to bedside. So these are the lab benches, and the idea is that we start with the technology here, but our goal ultimately is to get them off the bench and next to the patient bedside. And so we use this technology for early stage cancer detection. So trying to identify emerging tumors before they're visible at the surface. We can see them growing and changing things below the surface.
One of the projects that Audrey showed us is how she is using light to peer inside the brain to help diagnose and treat kids with ADHD.
One of the challenges of neuroimaging for this population is that the gold standard for neuroimaging is an MRI machine. And I don't know if you've ever been in an MRI machine. It's not really a viable option to study effectively this condition.
But with this headband, they can have a kid do some math homework and then ask, what does their brain look like? What parts are active? What parts aren't, but could be?
So essentially how The system works. We emit light in the near infrared range and use these detectors to gather how much of our light was backscattered.
Do you ever just meditate with this on?
I should.
Yeah,
Should
it'd be
record
interesting,
that.
right?
This is Seth, a PhD student in Dr. Bowden's lab.
The channels that we have here demonstrate different regions inside the brain that we are taking measurements from.
A lot of the work that we're trying to do is aimed at thinking about how can we design our technologies in a way that they're accessible. I believe that as I'm doing things, I should be, of all things, doing good. One thing that I do find interesting about light is that in some ways it does connect to my faith. So I'm a Christian, and the Bible talks about God as light. I think that's a really cool idea. I think that metaphor helps me understand at some level the way God works in us and through us. There's other things filling the spaces in between. I can't perceive them, but they're still totally there. It took understanding light to make that feel more real to me. My science and faith are kind of like another way of translating between the physical world and the non-physical world and bringing those two concepts together.
You, I want you. It's like picking teams for kickball. I want you to drive differently.
Roughly 6,000 people work at Vanderbilt. Any one of them can change the world. I'm Jad Abumrad, new professor here at Vandy, and today I'm meeting, bing!
You guys excited? Exhausted?
Both of those.
More on the excited.
Okay, good.
Doctors Jonathan Sprinkle and Dan Work are taking the pain out of traffic.
Every driver has experienced these jams on the freeway that seem to occur out of thin air. And yet we know what causes them. It's the way that you and I drive.
Dan called me and said, Jonathan, I have an idea for you. Are you interested? The experiment brought everybody to Tucson, Arizona on one of the hottest days of the year. Dan blows the horn to tell drivers, it's time to go now. They have one job, keep up with the car in front of you.
All the cars started off driving at a nice, smooth, uniform speed. And then right before your eyes,
Traffic out of nowhere, even though they're just going in a circle.
I might tap on the brakes just a little bit. The driver behind me has to brake harder to avoid crashing, and the driver behind them does the same thing. And so you get these ripple effects on the freeway.
The real trick is what happens next. Dan and Jonathan switch on a remote-operated cruise control to one car, just one. And they tell it to drive at the average speed of traffic. Instead of trying to catch the car in front of you, just drive at the average speed.
Lo and behold, the amount of stop-and-go waves started to decrease.
It's easy to miss, so let's just play it back one more time. So they're going around in a circle, the traffic waves begin. They turn on that one car, and the traffic waves for everyone vanish.
So we're going to speed up a little bit. Now we're going faster than we were before, but the amount of fuel being used is dramatically less.
What is that? Like, how much fuel did they save?
I think it was about 40% less fuel used.
So one car can do that for 20 cars?
Yeah.
Think about that. One car changing its behavior a tiny bit can affect 20 others. Did they just solve traffic? No.
Because then you start realizing, well, there's a big gap between making it work in a parking lot to getting it to work in the real world on wild freeways. So then we start thinking, like, how are we going to do it? The complexity from the engineering point of view exploded. I-24 Motion is made up of almost 300 4K resolution video cameras, so that as a vehicle is driving through this 4-mile stretch, it's always visible at least in one of the cameras.
This is our Beetle camera rig.
This is Will, one of the research scientists on the team.
This allows us to have 6 cameras on a single bolt and transmit all that video data over to our data center at Vanderbilt.
Whoa. It actually hurts my head a little bit. I almost just want there to be a soundtrack. What song should be playing right now? Maybe some Brian Eno thing?
I'm thinking of like all great road tripping music.
Dan and Jonathan's team are able to anonymously track all of these cars and plot that information on these massive graphs, where each pixel represents an individual car on I-24. At 70 miles per hour, the pixel is green.
10 miles per hour or slower, the pixel is red.
Why did this car stop? To find out what the cause is, you have to go back in time, downstream.
Wow, so somewhere here, some dip, excuse my language, hits the brakes a little tiny bit too hard, and then that creates a ripple. 15 minutes later, this person has no idea, but they're stuck in a traffic jam.
That's it.
Again, one person, in this case, mucks it up for everyone. So then the question became, could they do the circle thing, but this time on the freeway, and instead of with just one car, how about 100?
We had to develop a custom circuit board to control cars.
What's the thing that kept you up at night?
I have to say a single thing, huh?
This is Matt, another research scientist on the team.
This is a prototype, a way to interface with the cars using this Raspberry Pi.
The idea was they'd use that little box to control the speed of each vehicle.
This is what we assembled 100 of and then installed in all 100 cars.
This wire here would go under the console, plug into a wire that came off of the steering wheel, and then we're ready to deploy.
November 14th, 2022.
4 a.m., people are there making coffee. At some point, we're ready to start the tests. That then is this mad dash.
We're letting the vehicles go as fast as we reasonably can get them out on the roadway. We need to make sure that we bring every driver back safely. That is the only thing that matters.
The 100 cars insinuate themselves into rush hour traffic. A central server controls the speed of each one. And the idea, their hope, is that these cars will form a kind of wave-dampening blanket that will soothe the stop and go and make traffic flow more smoothly.
Did you witness something like the circle experiment, where as you infiltrated rush hour with your semi-autonomous driver systems, did you see it have an immediate effect on traffic?
There are examples where you can clearly see a wave traveling. One of our vehicles drive near the wave and the wave disappears. In the dream world, it turns green, but I would frankly take it even if it just turned yellow.
Because think of all the stress you would save, not to mention the gas. And if you multiply that savings out to a whole freeway, and then to many, many freeways across the nation, you're saving massive amounts of fuel.
We're choosing technologies that are not in the distant future. They're barely different from the things that we already have available today, and nobody really notices what changed. It's just better.
You could do a little screen. So those are 2 of the 5 videos that we are premiering, I believe tomorrow. They go out, I don't know if that's exactly right, so don't quote me on that, but they're now, they're tonight. Okay, so those 5 videos, those are 2 of 5. And you know, the others, we have the chemist with the breast milk that I mentioned. We have historians who are unerasing millions of stories using AI that come from the North Atlantic slave trade. Just incredible stories. So please, as you watch them, first of all, I hope you watch them with a sense of pride at being a part of this community. But I also hope you tell everybody that you know to forward these videos around. But before we sort of get back to the videos, I wanted to bring out the stars of those last 2 videos that you watched. Please welcome to the stage Doctors Audrey Bowden, Dan Work, and Jonathan Sprinkle. Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you guys. I want to start with, since we just watched you guys on traffic, I want to ask you guys. So in the green room, we were talking about one of the interesting sort of potential next chapters, which is in order for this system that you guys are developing to solve traffic, you have to get people to use it. How do you socially engineer the unwashed masses to turn it on, assuming you can even get it in the car to begin with? I'm curious to know, like, is there a part of you that wants to sort of take that problem on too?
I'd love to be able to take a piece of that problem on. It is a challenge because I think even now, we don't know how many people turn on adaptive cruise control every day. And the trick, if I think of it as a trick, is to just make the adaptive cruise control do the work and you don't notice the difference. That would be the magic.
So in that video, we saw that you were sifting through the data. You weren't ready to sort of declare a winner or a loser or a result of any kind. I'm curious where you guys are now.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. We have papers that are currently under review with the latest results from the experiment, but there's a lot that gets us really excited. I think since that video was filmed, we've also added a lot of additional sensing onto the freeway. And those waves that you saw in the film, those were 4 miles long. We now know that those waves travel upwards of 20 miles, and they happen day in and day out. So these waves are so common. And we're starting to see how these waves actually link to vehicular crashes as well. So if we can get rid of the waves, it's not just going to make roadways more fuel efficient, but it's also going to save lives.
Wow. What is the time distance between the beginning of the wave and 20 miles later? Is that an hour? Or like, how far is that?
They run at 12 miles per hour, so they'll cover 24 miles in 2 hours.
Wow.
Stuff that happens at 6:15 in the morning is impacting drivers at 8:15 in the morning on that same roadway.
That is amazing. It does make you feel a little bit like we're all sort of tiny little peons floating on a sea of forces that are much beyond our control in some way? Or no? Maybe it's just me.
Yeah. We are totally in control. It's just our own self-interest of getting to our destination faster. I mean, I said it in the video, we're all bad drivers. I mean, we do what we think is right based on the information that we have. That causes us to speed up when we shouldn't, and it forces us to brake too hard when we're paying the price for not knowing about the traffic conditions ahead. The cars have the possibility of knowing about traffic ahead. If we feed the cars the information, they can do things for us automatically that make traffic better, not just safer for the people that are in those cars.
Excellent. Dr. Bowden, question for you. One of my favorite, this is sort of a hard left turn, but one of my favorite moments of that video is you at the end searching for words to try and give voice to the intersection between your science and your faith. I'm curious if does that language feel easy to find as a scientist or hard to find? And I was curious if you had any hesitation to talk about it, given that you're at a research university where that kind of thing generally doesn't come up.
So I would say in terms of the language being easy to find, I think it's not so easy for me just because, I don't know, I think the words that are often used in those two spaces are very different. But in terms of my comfort level in talking about it or just living that experience all the time, I think, it's something that I can't separate from like who I am in the morning and who I am in the lab. I'm a scientist and I'm a believer, and so I think those two things are just part of me. Mm-hmm. I think being on an academic campus, you'll be surprised. Actually, there are quite a few people who have a strong faith on campus, particularly in the sciences. Most of the people that I know who are believers in something are typically scientists and engineers. So I think it's pretty normal. It's just not necessarily talked about, right? It's not necessarily something that we discuss in the classroom, but I think it still can pervade who we are as people, right? So everything that I do, I hope, is infused by my desire to live a life that I think is consistent with the faith that I have.
And it did occur to me, actually, it's funny, I watch these videos and I see something a little bit new each time. It occurred to me that the three of you are united, at the very least, by a common metaphor. So you referenced MRI, and the FNIRS technology that you use is a kind of alternative to MRI. And I've heard you guys also talk about you've built an MRI for traffic. So it's almost like you're wrapping the headband around rush hour, in a way. It does make me wonder what a collaboration between the three of you would look like. No pressure, but would it be possible to wrap a headband around somebody during rush hour and understand?
That was the idea that you just popped into my head.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, I think it's really important, right? Because also part of driving and traffic has to do with just driver attention and awareness, right? And understanding what's going on in people's heads. We were talking earlier about the humanness of driving and how everybody, you said it, Jonathan, just everybody driving is thinking about where they're going, where their kids are, where they have to be. There's so many things going through our heads, and how can we measure that or monitor that and help people realize how they can parse through that so that they can be safe drivers, but also be attentive to the things that are important to them.
Yeah. I want to add in there because literally we had this conversation in my lab yesterday. My students are in the back. And I think I had said something silly like, we'll never be able to see what's inside a driver's head, so that's going to put a limit on how good of a model we'll ever be able to build. So I guess I was wrong. We should figure out how to put the headband on and go.
It occurs to me I didn't ask you, and I should. The headband technology, what's the status of that, and where do you see that sort of? Because again, what we talk about in the video is your desire to take these giant monstrosities and be able to make them portable and usable in a living room when a kid's doing math homework. How close are we to that future?
I think we're months to certainly less than 5 years, months to maybe 1 or 2 years out from that. The technology that you saw in the video is almost nearly ready for our academic publication. But we have other aspirations besides that, because of course our goal is not just to do science for science sake and for our own learning's sake, but really to benefit all of society with that. So our ultimate goal, besides publishing papers, of course, is to get that technology out to people who can use it. And so I think there are lots of different avenues for that, whether it's through commercialization or through open sourcing some things so that people can build and test and use things on their own. We're thinking about a lot of different options.
Gotcha. And curious to hear from you guys, what's next? You've talked about sensors now extending the range of I-24 motion. What's itching at you? What wakes you up at 2 in the morning? I'm curious, where do you see this? What's the leading edge of your work?
It's to build on what Dan said earlier. We're excited about what we see and all the analysis that we've done, and our peers need to look at that and make sure that it's right, but it doesn't stop us from saying we need to deploy this as soon as we can. We need to get more technology into the hands of consumers as fast as we can if it makes their drives safer, less stressful, and makes traffic better. And that's what's itching at us. How can we put this behind 100, 200, 10,000 cars every day on the interstate and measure the difference? If we can start to do that at pennies on the drive, then you can start to see lives saved, productivity gained, stress reduced, all of these things that really, all we need to do is convince somebody to change some software and it could happen.
Well, I want to thank all of, before I close, is any dangling thoughts that you're dying to say? No. I see no in your eyes.
Well,
maybe. Okay, you've got one.
One thing that came up between all of us is being able to tell society about what we've been able to do, and to thank all of you. Does anybody in here pay taxes? You paid for the research that we've done, and the National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, probably NIH has paid for a lot of this work, and we're very grateful to your support as taxpayers and to our funding agencies.
And I also think this is a really awesome example of collaboration across the university, right? So here we are in the sciences and engineering, and here you are in cinema and the fine arts, and our ability to tell our story, to have impact that is going to resound just even from an event like this, is so critically dependent on all of these disciplines coming together. Your expertise and what you've lent to us in training us and giving us, this voice and this medium is just really powerful, and is something that we wouldn't have been able to do for ourselves. And it's really critical to our mission as academics to take what we're doing and get it out there. So I think this is a really awesome event. I'm so glad that you're now here at Vanderbilt, and really I'm happy to be a part of this community.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you guys for your work, for letting us stick a camera and a mic in your faces while you were doing your work. And just for being open and for being brilliant. So thank you, Jonathan Sprinkle, Dan Work, and Audrey Bowden. Please give them a round of applause. Oh, you grab it. Okay. I'm so excited for what's about to happen. That it is now my profound honor to get to bring to the stage Vanderbilt's Provost, Sibel Raver. Sibel Raver serves as the Provost and Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at Vanderbilt. She is a renowned developmental psychologist, renowned researcher, a fellow New Yorker, and as Provost, Sibel oversees all the faculty, all the staff for Vanderbilt's 10 schools and colleges. And before Vanderbilt, she was a deputy at NYU, and she's held faculty positions at University of Chicago and Cornell. So please welcome to the stage, Provost Raver.
Good evening, everybody. What a thrill. It's just incredibly exciting to be here, and I really want to thank Jad, I really want to thank Steve Rattel and team, and of course our Chancellor for this amazing, amazing opportunity that frankly, there are very few words we have to express the extent to which we feel that this is awesome. It was truly, truly awesome. And it makes me clear that I have the best job in the world, frankly, to be able to support and to encourage and to foster the kind of environment that supports these scholars, these researchers, and this incredibly high level of innovation. Truly just amazed, humbled, and so proud to be part of our Vanderbilt community. One great gift of quantum potential, I think, is how it reminds us of this extraordinary opportunity that we have to be part of something this big, something that really is truly expansive and incredibly important to our world. And I love how both Dan and Jonathan and Audrey made really clear that you are part of all of that in supporting science, in supporting research, in supporting universities, and part of it in communicating out what universities do. One of my first initiatives when I joined Vanderbilt was to launch Discovery Vanderbilt, a very large landmark investment that we made in research and innovation, because we want our people to think big. And these examples are just a few of all the ways in which our faculty and our students and our staff think big. We know that universities like ours generate incredible innovation, truly groundbreaking solutions to some of the world's biggest problems, biggest challenges, as you heard the Chancellor say so eloquently at the beginning of this event. And we know that this means that our scholars must be free to take huge risks and also to follow their imaginations wherever they lead. So this is a process by which our students, not only our faculty, but our students engage in their journeys of personal growth and development. And it's what our staff and our faculty do every day in their work. Simply put, it's the very heart of what we do. Some years ago, Chancellor Diermeier provided us with a vision of how we could work together, and he gave us the language of being radical, which I just love. It's not something typical of universities to be radical, and in many ways, that notion that we could be radical in the style with which we collaborate, that is truly a common phrase of our shared vocabulary and the way that we work at Vanderbilt, that he could really tap that essence of what is distinctive about Vanderbilt so that we could capitalize on it and grow it and grow all the work that we do through radical collaboration. It's certainly that I think you've seen tonight, this radical collaboration across diverse fields to bring together different ways of seeing the world, to apply one system of thought to another, to allow for resonance, to allow for synthesis, to allow for the endless possibility of the new. This kind of collaboration leads to extraordinary innovation. But I don't think I have to describe this with words tonight because we're about to experience it firsthand. On that note, I'm honored to be able to introduce our percussionist who is on our faculty, Hae Jung, who is just amazing, associate professor of percussion at Vanderbilt University's Blair School of Music. Since the age of 9 in her native South Korea, Ji-hae has been performing with many of the world's most important orchestras and instrumentalists. She's also a passionate educator and a passionate endorser of other musicians, other artists, holding appointments with leading institutions and art organizations around the globe. And we're so fortunate to have her here at Vanderbilt and with us tonight to perform Joseph Schwantner's Velocities. Accompanying Ji-hae's performance will be a video produced by a science artist, Kendra Oliver, associate professor in Vanderbilt Department of Pharmacology and director of design at the School of Medicine Basic Sciences. Kendra also directs the Art Lab Studio, a program to better understand the intersection between the arts and sciences, which is housed at the Wondry, Vanderbilt Center for Innovation. To create this collaborative piece, Kendra met with Jihei to learn about the emotions and processes represented in the music, and then match them to the visual images that you will see that play in synchrony, essentially, with the sound. Those images were provided by the laboratory of Matthew Tiska, Cornelius Vanderbilt Professor of Cell and Developmental Biology. Truly, as you can hear, an incredible testament to radical collaboration. So with that, I've said enough. Please join me in welcoming Jihei Jung.
Oh my God, that was captivating. Oh my Lord. Did you guys want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what we were seeing there?
Hi, my name is Leah Kaplan. I'm a fourth-year PhD student in Professor Matt Tiska's lab. And some of the research that I do is understanding how a certain protein is important for cell shape. And I think we can all appreciate that there are many different cell shapes that were dancing across the screen. And so understanding how that protein works helps us understand how those things occur when things are working well and when they're not. That is important for understanding different diseases.
Hi everyone, my name is Julissa Burgos, and I'm also a fourth-year grad student in Dr. Matt Tiska's lab. I'm a little bit different because I do microbiology within my project, but I also work with a lot of the cells that you guys were able to observe during the performance. And my project specifically, I work with a bacteria that targets these cells and it manipulates them. And it specifically manipulates those proteins for its advantage to cause disease. And that's kind of like the avenue that we look at within my project.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Just one tiny little fiddly bit question. Can you introduce us to some of the characters around those screens? I mean, I saw like, it looked like neurons maybe. Can you just give us like a few specifics of what?
So specifically our lab works mostly with gut cells. So the things that you were seeing mostly were protrusions from cells that are coming out of the cell surface. Specifically, this might be a big word, but it's called actin, one of those big protrusions that are made. And so those mostly that you were able to see are coming out of the cell. And yeah, that kind of...
And at what speed do they usually, I mean, so that was a very cool second. So that was not super sped up for our viewing pleasure.
No. Some of those were a little sped up, I think, for musical interpretation, but they do work or move very quickly. And actually what's really exciting about this work, and I think what was really exemplified with this performance, is we just saw live cells. Like those are the, the fundamental units of life, and to be able to see them moving and creating all these shapes is a huge asset to understanding our world, but also, speaks to the technology and I think the research that we're able to do. It's just mesmerizing to watch.
And Jihei, I was just curious, I think so often about the technology that Audrey and Jonathan and Dan were talking about and the math that goes on in your work and trying to understand this world quantitatively. But you expressed so much emotion. There was so much incredible exuberance and movement. Right?
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about what's going on for you as you perform that connects with what we saw.
So one of my goals as a musician is to communicate and my audience to listeners to listen not only by the ears, but really listening through the whole body, right? Like there's every sense that I want them to experience what I'm experiencing. So when I was working with Kendra, using Matt Tiska's cell images, I just described how I would think about this piece to be expressed. So some of the moments I say, I'm just floating on the oceans and swimming on the surface. I actually don't know how to swim, but imagine I'm floating. And some of the moments are so aggressive, and it's the emotion of aggression and angular and bold colors. And one of my favorite part of the piece was just imagining in the dark, on the dark sky with a very tiny little stars. So I think Kendra was able to capture those moments to go along with music.
Do you, just out of curiosity, I mean, that's a long piece. There's got to be like 10,000 notes in that piece. How do you remember the notes because you memorize the notes, or do you think in terms of oceans and waves, and that helps you remember? I'm just curious, like how these metaphors interact with memory.
I practice memory. Like that's something that I do every day, and I teach my students to get better at it. But memory is a funny thing. I think we talked about this before. Like memorizing something and writing down is very different than also memorizing and performing in front of people with your heart beating really fast and all the nerves. And I think for me, with getting all the notes correctly, and after that, it really is the emotion and expression that helps me get through the next passages. So I'm not really thinking about what's coming after. Probably that would not be a successful performance. But what really helps me in this particular one, after working with Kendra, was focusing on, wow, like Kendra creates something really beautiful. I want to be able to match that images.
Thanks. Well, thank you so much for that performance. Thank you guys for the visuals. Great. Truly extraordinary. Please give us one more round of applause. Okay, we have come to the end of our evening. I don't know what it is about. There's something about watching her play. This is now the 4th time I've seen her play. I just want to do it too. And I know I can't. There's something so kinetic about it. It's just, it's infectious. I just want to acknowledge a couple of people that I've got to thank. First of all, thank you, Provost Raver. Thank you, Chancellor, for believing in this project and for investing in it. I'm profoundly grateful for being a part of this community and for the vote of confidence that you've given us to do this work. I also, on Steve Urtel's team, I've got to thank Ben Khoury and especially Marissa Shapiro, who has walked with me through this entire process, and it was a long one, a lot of ups and downs. Thank you to Mac and Adriana, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us tonight. They're in Germany, but they made it look the way it does and feel the way it does, and I'm profoundly grateful to them. And I also just want to underline one thing. This is my first experience working with a comms team, and y'all out there who've put this event together and who've put this whole journey for the last year, y'all are the hardest working, kindest people I've met in a long time. So props to the entire Steve Urtel's entire team. And I also want to give a high five to Dan and Jonathan and Audrey and Steve and Jane and Daniel and all the folks that are featured in these videos, and of course to my wife Carla Murthy and my great and wise father Jad Abumrad. Both are here. Thank you for your endless support. And lastly, thank you all of you guys for coming. Please help us spread the word on these videos and spread them far and wide. And if you know people who should be featured in our next round, let us know. Thank you, guys.